And I remember, back in the days, many years ago, there is a habit of putting the word online or cyber in front of everything. So for example, harassment, right? Of course, these days we can say, there are cyber harassment, but in essence, it is just harassment, right? Whether you do it online or on the streets or in your house, at school, who cares? I mean, it's just harassment. But people have a habit of putting the word cyber in front of everything, like cyber this and cyber that, which is okay in some cases, but sometimes it just confuses people, especially those who are making the law. They might be thinking, do I have to create a new law? Is this something new, right? So that is a different repercussion or consequence. Sometimes if we just stick the word cyber or online in front of everything. That's basically my point. So I hope everybody is on the same page, right? If you have other definitions, maybe you can put it in the chat. But generally, this is what I normally use when I talk to people, so that we are looking at the same thing, and people don't get different ideas. Okay. So to give an example of an online cyber-dependent crime, right? Basically, crime using technology. So so this is a screenshot of an attempt by a piece of malicious code, malware, and this code is written to guess username and password of a login, right? So I know it looks very cryptic, but if you look at just one line, you can see there's a timestamp, right? You can see some IP addresses. This is IP address, the source of the attack, the source of the malware, and this is the username and password combination that it is attempting, right? So what's interesting, maybe not so interesting for some of you. What's interesting about this is that, as you can see, the timestamp, this attack or attempts happen in a short period of time, right? Every few seconds, and it's just guessing different username password combination, right? Root 3838, root 5656, root this, root bikini, root Bobby, and all that, and it goes through like a few thousand lists of password username combination, right? So this is an example of a computer dependent crime, right? Because they have to write a code on this, and it has to be executed, it has to be deployed. And what this code does, what this malicious code does, is it tries to guess username and password of exposed systems on the internet. Will scan the internet, look for certain services, right? And then try to log in. And it's trying to log in by guessing the username and password. Eventually, it will be successful. It gets in, and then it will download some other piece of code to be executed on the host itself. So as you can see, this attack is somewhat automated, right? So you write the code, you execute once, and it gets run multiple times. There is not much human intervention in this case. When the attack is successful, then the attacker will get notified. I have a system for you in Japan, for example, or in China, and things like that. All right. So what we are looking at here is just the logs of the activity, right? We don't know what is really causing this because we don't have access to the program, right? We also do not know who is behind this because all we have is an IP address. IP address is an internet address assigned to computers or machines on the internet, right? So we have some information, but we're not really sure. And also, if I just look at this, I'm not able to determine what is this thing really trying to do, right? It's just trying to get in, but I'm not sure what it does after that, right? So I don't have that visibility. Anyhow, this is just a quick example before we go into more discussion. So I want to go into some aspects of cybercrime, and maybe it will trigger some thoughts and discussion here as well. So some aspects of cybercrime. So I want to focus first on the for-profit aspect, right? So if you follow a lot of discussion on cybercrime, there's always this discussion about motivation. Like, why do people do this, Of course, for cyber criminals, in a lot of cases, it's for making money. Because if it's not for making money, then what's the point, right? So why am I investing my time to do this? And as we will see, the preparation for committing some of these crimes are very elaborate, right? And they are professionally run and executed. So, this is not just for a hobby or just to impress somebody anymore. And when we say, the ultimate distinction is for making money, then what we are also trying to do is trying to make this a bit different from some attacks out there that we have seen that is meant to just sabotage or disrupt. So there are attacks that just want to destroy things, very destructive, or bring things down, where there are no financial element to it. So what I'm trying to say is that for those people who work in the security response team, normally when they have an incident, they try to make some assessment if this is related to a criminal enterprise that's trying to make money, or is this, something that is different than that? Is this a sabotage, or is this a, denial of service attack? I have an example here. So sometimes attackers, right, try to bring down a network or a system just because they want to disrupt something or achieve some other goals, maybe to distract or to just make people angry, make people riot or something like that. So the making money bit is very important to understand. And as you can see, when we say, okay, criminals are doing this to make money, then obviously we also want to answer the question for those who are doing investigation: how much money have they made from this scheme, right? Is it 100 ringgit? Is it 1,000? Is it millions? So if you search for ransomware reports, ransomware activities, or ransomware reports, you'll see that some of these ransomware operators, they're making money in the millions, right? They make a lot of money, which then also will get us to think, if they're making that much money, how come it's very difficult to find them? Because obviously this money have to go to their bank account, right? Somehow. So why is it difficult to find these people? So we'll discuss that also in a bit. So for attacks that are for profit, right? So maybe some of you are already wondering, are there non-profit attacks if there are for profit? So anyhow, for for-profit attacks, I think the most common thing that we see today, right? Okay, one of the things, maybe not the most common, but one of the things that we always see is the social engineering types of attack. Social engineering, that's a terminology, that terminology was coined, I think, by some security people many years ago to say that attackers basically trick you into doing something for them, right? So the attack may not be that technical, which means that they don't have to use something that is very complicated to get you to transfer money to them, but maybe they just trick you into believing that you have to transfer the money right now, because if you don't do this, then something will happen to you, or something will happen to your system, or we are here to help you, and therefore please transfer money to us, and things like that. Maybe some of us are familiar with the tech support scams, where they will, you'll see something in your computer, or you experience something and then you call a number, or they will call you to say that you have a problem with your computer, or with your Netflix account, or with this and that, and you give them access to your computer by installing some software that they can access remotely. And when doing that, you access, they will access your bank account. They will make you think that you have transferred a lot of money to them, and then you have to pay them back, and so on and so forth. So it's very elaborate conversation with some tools. I will not say that it is not that technical because there are some technical elements to it, but basically, in a lot of cases, you are the one being tricked into giving information or doing things for them, right? Or transferring money for them. For those of you who may have a lot of time or have some time, I encourage to, if you haven't already, check out some of these videos on YouTube, like this person called Scam Baiter, who goes after the scam call centers, and to see how how he exposes how the scammers operate in the call center and things like that. Maybe a bit of warning: this can be very time consuming, maybe, because once you watch a video, you may want to watch more. So just be careful on that. But just to give this idea that the social engineering really works until today, right? So despite many of the education that we give to users about being very careful, don't do this, don't do that, there is always somebody out there that is prime or ready to be scammed somehow, unfortunately, right? So I think it should make us think harder whether our advice to users about being safe online, are they really helpful or not, right? Do they really help? Because the number of people that is still being tricked by this method is still a lot, right? The sort of the tech support or the advance fee scam, right? So you pay something in advance to get something, right? So that still works. The second example of social engineering, but this is a bit more technical, right? Because there is an element of cybercrime first before they social engineer. So this is the business email compromise, and I see that many people in this region, in Asia Pacific region, this particular attack is still very common. Let me give you an example, because I think if you Google business email compromise examples, you'll find a lot of specific example. But I just want to give you an example. So let's say you have a business and you deal with me, right? I provide some service for you. So let's give an example. Maybe you pay me money to maintenance of your office, right? So what will happen is that the attacker will hack into my email account, right? And then using my email, the attacker will email you to say that, by the way, Dr. Amir, I just changed my bank account. So for the next payment, can you send it to this new account, right? So okay, Adli, thank you for letting me know. I'll do that. I'll get my staff to do that for you. And then 2 weeks later, you get a call from me. I said, Dr. Amir, where's my payment? What happened? And you say, I already emailed you. I already sent it to the new account. And I'm like, what account? My account is still the same, kind of thing. Sounds very simple, right? But it happens a lot. But in this case, the difference between the first one is that in the first one, they don't have to hack anything. They just convince you into doing things for them, right? In the second one, there's a hacking element. There is a system compromise element. They get into my email account, and once they are in my email account, basically they have access to the address book. They know who I'm interacting with. They're watching, right? And they can also hide some messages that is coming to me, and vice versa, because they're in my system, basically, right? And in this particular case, I remember when phishing was very new, it's very hot. We were sending, me and my team on my organization back then, we were telling people, before you click on a link, before you respond to email, check the email address, double check. In this case, that advice is not really helpful anymore, because the email comes from the real address, right? And the nature of the conversation obviously looks very normal, right? Of course, it's hard to define what is normal sometimes, but a lot of the victims will say, well, it came from the normal email, or the email sounded like you, right? And they fall for it. And this is very common. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, I spoke to somebody who just fell for this, right? And they said, I don't know how it happened. It happened very quickly. And, yeah, we lost $10,000 or $5,000. It's very common. So there is an aspect of social engineering in that kind of attack, but there is also this illegal access to a system, right? So, for example, in Malaysia, we have the Computer Security Act, I think. What is it? Yeah, one of those, something like that. Computer Security Act that defines, that says, if you do illegal access on a system, that's a crime. That's illegal. And for the for-profit, let me go a bit quicker. There is also the extortion type that we commonly see today. And this is in the case of ransomware. This is where the attacker, or if you want to call them cyber criminals, the criminals find their way into your computer, and then they will start to encrypt the data in your computer or even in your backups. And once that is done, for insurance, they also copy this data, right, to themselves, and then you will get a message. We have encrypted your system, so you don't have access to your data, and also we have a copy of your data. If you don't pay us money, we will publish this data, right, and you will never get access to your data. So this is extortion, asking for money when they have encrypted the data. I also remember there was an operation by some law enforcement agency in ASEAN countries many years ago for sextortion, right? Sextortion, basically, you meet someone online, you get to know them, and then conversation, and they will trick you. Maybe there's a social engineering aspect to it. They will trick you to expose yourself. They take a copy of that, and then now with that video, they will threaten you. If you don't pay us money, we will spread this video or put it online or send it to your family members or something like that. So anyhow, long story short, this is all about making money, right? The methods may vary, but if you compare the techniques and tricks, they follow the same playbook most of the time. And most importantly, these things has been happening, for a long time already. There are also the non-profit type. I thought of mentioning this a bit, and this may fall, a lot of this or some of this may fall under the cyber-enabled crime, the traditional crimes. I mentioned about cyberbullying and cyber harassment, right? Of course, there are no financial loss from the victim directly, but they could be, right? They could be, because maybe this person will need medical treatment, or maybe they will get hurt, and they need to be and there are some costs there for counseling and things like that. Defamation is a popular example. I like to use this as an example because sometimes many of the cybersecurity response team, they are very specialist team, which means that they deal with a more technical report, but they always get reports about defamation, right, about misinformation and things like that, where they may not have the skills or the solution to deal with this, because they are trained to deal with more of the technical attacks and so on. But also we're seeing some crimes like fake news or influence operation that uses the online platform to maybe change the outcomes of an election, for example. That's very serious, right? Although it is not for profit, perhaps, but it's something that can change the political landscape of a country, or it could be an influence operation to bring down a business by a competitor, things like that. So although you have these two kinds, not-for-profit attacks and for-profit, when it comes to investigation, they are pretty similar, right? Because you have to acquire digital evidence from the devices, from the information provider, and the perpetrators, the people behind these attacks or crimes, may be anywhere, right? They don't have to be in the same country. They could be, in country X, country Y, and the provider is in a different country. So when it comes to doing investigation and getting information, it may be a bit difficult, and therefore it will influence the outcome of whether or not we can stop this crime or go after these criminals, right? Because we just don't know where they are. We don't have information, things like that. Okay, now moving on. Financial loss. So when it comes to financial loss, there's two aspects to this. One is, okay, maybe the amount of money stolen. So let's say somebody scammed me, or somebody, attacked my company with ransomware, and I pay them money, right? Although I'm being advised not to pay money, but I don't have a choice. If I don't pay money, I don't get my data back. I don't have backups, which is my fault. But so I gave them $100,000. So I lost $100,000. But financial loss is not just that, right? And I think this aspect is something that is being missed in a lot of the discussion in mainstream media, because people only focus on that. Oh, this person lost $1 million, or this company lose this amount of money, or attackers managed to get this money. But there's also cost of fixing things, right? So if I was attacked by a ransomware, I have to fix a lot of things in my organization. So over time, buying new tools, replacement. So that's additional money. And what about cost of disruption to the business, right? When I'm attacked with ransomware, I cannot operate for a couple of days or a few months or something like that. So there's cost to that as well. And in some cases, depending on the regulation that are in place or some laws, you may have to pay fines, because when you've been attacked, right, or you experience a disruption, it probably means that you have not done your computer security properly, or according to the best practice, or according to the regulation and things like that. So there is that outcome as well that don't get discussed that much, right? So moving on. Talking about cyber criminals, we are talking about the criminal enterprise. So this is basically an organized crime in a lot of cases, right? So what this means basically is this is not a 1 or 2 person show normally, right? There is some element of doing this full time, which means that people get paid to do some of this work. However, I think what gets missed in a lot of discussion is that the organization also use other specialists or services provided by other criminals, right? So for example, in the cybersecurity world, or cybersecurity incident response world, there is a term called bulletproof hosting, right? So what are bulletproof hosting? So bulletproof hostings are data centers or internet companies that provide services to the criminals. So that when someone or law enforcement or someone who is investigating contact the data center or ISP to shut down some activities of the criminals or trying to get data, they will just ignore this request, right? So they provide cover for the cybersecurity criminals. So within the criminal enterprise, there are specialization. Some criminal enterprise, they specialize in just making the tools, and they sell the tools to others so that they can execute the crime, right? The activities, and the people who develop the tools, they get a commission, they get a cut, right? So there is that aspect to this whole thing as well, and we have seen this in the banking Trojans attacks, the ransomware, even the scam centers. There is a call center, and everybody gets a cut, right, out of how much money they can scam, but also there are people processing payments, and there are people who are providing the infrastructure, the hosting, and those who are doing the execution. So it's multi-tiers, and sometimes they are in different part of the world doing different things, and this makes investigation very, very challenging, right? So what normally happens is that we only have 1 or 2 information or artifacts about one part of the criminal enterprise, or 2 parts of the criminal enterprise, and piecing things together may take a long time, right? And by the time we have evidence, perhaps they have made enough money and they have retired already, So they have moved on, right? They also maybe sell their business to others to continue, or to to create other similar variant of this particular attack, things like that. So there's that aspect as well. Okay, the last bit that I want to talk about when it comes to criminals is the cashing out. So how do, I think I raised this question earlier, how do they actually cash out whatever they have stolen? Because it will not be smart to transfer the money to their own account, because I can easily trace that, right, if I'm an investigator. So this element is critical to their business, obviously. And I'll give you some examples how they do it, and maybe you know already that you have seen. In Australia, for example, if I go to some shops and I buy a lot of gift cards, right? So maybe some of you know what gift cards are, right? So we can buy, let's say, Amazon gift card that has a certain value, $100, and I can give this gift card to another person. Say, take this gift card, you can buy something on Amazon. So if I go to some shops here and I buy 15 gift cards of Amazon, or any shops, the cashier will ask me, sir, do you really need this gift card, right? Why do you need this gift card? Is this for you, right? And the reason why they do that is because attackers sometimes, instead of asking you to transfer money to them, will ask you to buy gift cards and just give them the serial number, right? Give them the serial number. So what can they do with that? Well, they can actually sell the gift cards, or they can buy something, from Amazon or from some of the shops, and then they will sell these products online to get the cash, right? So it's kind of a long way to get the money, but the point is, you can't really trace the money going to them directly, right? So they get the victim to buy the gift cards, give them the serial number, and they will do the rest in terms of processing. What is also very common in some of the modus operandi of the attackers, I think this is very common, or also in Malaysia and maybe in many of the Asian countries, is using money mules, using unsuspecting people's account as a transit of the money before money being sent to them, right? So while they are scamming people, they are also recruiting users, maybe by tricking them into applying for a fake job, right? So you're doing this job with somebody you don't know. All you have to do is process some payments. Money will come to your account, and once you receive this money, we'll give you instruction on what to do with it. Maybe send it to a different account, or go to Western Union, send the money to this particular address or something like that. So there is that aspect as well. And we also see more and more some of the scammers, especially with ransomware, using cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency is a bit interesting because unlike using gift cards or money mules, the whole goal is to make the whole transaction anonymous, right? Of course, I will give you some books later on to read. Initially, people thought Bitcoin was very anonymous, but it is not. So criminals learn about this, that law enforcement has some ability to de-anonymize some of the transaction using cryptocurrency. So they use different types of cryptocurrency, right? They make new ones. So they also evolve, and it's basically a catch and mouse game as well in this particular space. But the point that I want to stress to everybody here is when you hear or you look at the cyber criminal activity or cybercrime incident, think about how are they cashing out? How do they take the money for themselves? And they have to make sure, for them, the challenge for them is to make sure that the money cannot be traced to them immediately, right? Maybe eventually it will be traced, but it might be late already because the money is gone, or they can spend it, or they can, change their identity or something like that. But this is an important element in the investigation. Okay. Another point that I want to raise is, okay, what is the relationship between cybercrime and data breach? So I think more and more we hear about organizations have data breaches, right? Especially organization that has a lot of information, personal information about users. And maybe some of you are thinking, okay, maybe an airline company, maybe, telecom company, but they're not the only ones with personal information. If you really think about it, there are many government agencies that has a lot of personal information. Universities are not excluded. University has a lot of very interesting personal information. Hospitals has a lot of very private personal information. The point is, a lot of organizations are collecting information without really knowing how to secure them. I think that's a main issue today. As a result, we have all these data breaches, right? People coming in, steal this data from databases, and then selling them in the underground marketplace. So, what is the implication of that to cybercrime? Okay, so long story short, one way to think about it is that it makes cybercrime a lot easier, because attackers can be very specific to where they target and use those information as part of their social engineering or attack to make things more convincing, and so on and so forth, right? So the point that I want to raise here is that when we look at cybercrime, especially when we try to address things, we try to address something that may not be as critical as making sure that information that is hosted in various organizations is secured. So for example, I may be focusing on education of the users to not give data, right? When in fact, the user's data is already being leaked out through data breaches, right? So I'm putting the burden of protection to normal users, our parents, our mothers, our sisters, when in fact the one that is irresponsible are the enterprises, the businesses, the government agencies, right? Who collects a lot of information for who knows what, right? And insists that they need all this information, and yet they cannot secure them. And the saddest part is that in some countries, there are no real consequences for a data breach. Life goes on, right? Maybe they will say, oh, we are sorry this happened. But these are the things that are fueling the cybercrime industry. So, we focus on fighting the cyber criminals, and yet we are giving them fuels, to make the attack more strategic, more directed, and so on and so forth. Anyhow, who do we blame for this? Maybe you guys have the answer for me. So, addressing cybercrime, maybe just 3 points, because I think time is running out. Okay, education and awareness, no doubt, very important. But I think we have to, every now and then, audit ourselves. Okay, how do we educate people, and when do we educate them, right? Do we educate them when they are children, or do we wait until they go into the workforce? When? And how do we educate them? When it comes to cybercrime, there's a lot of intersection between cybercrime issues and computer security education. What do I mean by this? We always teach the do's and don'ts in cybersecurity, like with passwords, with, patching computers, upgrading your systems, don't let, strangers access your password, use encryption, things like that. So those advice are, yes, still very important, because they will address the technical aspect of some of the cybercrime attacks, especially when, when they use malicious codes, malware, and things like that. But there are also things where sometimes when you look at some of the advice, they are very old advice. For example, passwords, right? So, people still emphasize on passwords, right? Like, oh, you need to have strong passwords. You have, it has to have this many characters. You have to mix it up. I think today you don't have to tell them that anymore. You need to just fast forward to, please use password manager and enable two-factor authentication, right? Just go directly there. And now some online providers are recommending using passkeys instead of passwords, right? Things like that. There is, however, an implication to that, because now it means if I'm telling people to have password managers, now they have to download a new tool, right? And they have to have another device for enabling two-factor authentication, right? So what is the implication of this for those who do not have additional devices, like senior citizens or people who only have one phone for few people in the family, right? So that's when two-factor may not really work because you need that piece of device for individual. So you need to look into that. And also, for example, you still have advice that I see that is being sent out to people, like, do not click on links. Is that really practical anymore? Because even now, I receive text messages from the banks with links, right? So they want me to click on it, and yet, attackers are using the same technique. So what does that mean? Does it mean that, we give advice that is not practical, or do we need something else there, right? So normally today, if you have antivirus solution or antivirus in the mail gateway, I'm talking technically, those solutions should be able to detect if you are going to a malicious website or a phishing website and things like that. Because I know people will just click on things, right? So telling people not to click on things actually doesn't really work in my experience. Everybody will just click on something, right? If you don't believe me, maybe if I can get an email of everybody, I will send an email to you and I can prove to you, maybe half of you will click on something that, something that looks interesting, like a job offer or something like that. Now, when it comes to awareness and education, I think there's a typo there. What I want everybody to think about is that maybe it's better if we have built-in security where there's a possibility of cybercrime being committed, right? And I see this becoming very, very common now, and maybe you have experienced it as well. And I think it's working. For example, with banking transactions, right? So a lot of the banks now, they have very, very advanced fraud detection and people looking at fraud related activities. So for example, if your card is being used in a not so normal location, suddenly it's being used on an online portal that you never use or visited, you may get an alert, hey, your money is being used here. Is that you? If it's not you, call us directly, right? So I think we need something like this that is more practical, because to expect people to know what they're doing, it's probably expecting too much, right? And we're saying this based on facts, because the numbers is getting bigger when it comes to cybercrime. And I think maybe we have to admit, just by education, this will not solve the problem. Education, yes, is important, but it will not solve the problem. I don't know if you agree with me. If not, let's debate on that. And that last point, very second last point, apprehending cyber criminals. Long story short, easier said than done, right? And I think this is one of the pain points in dealing with cyber crimes, because we get all these reports, right? People say, I lost money here, I see money there, and even sometimes we see reports on how this is done, right? We know how this works. We know that, okay, this group, they operate in Malaysia, but they also have branches in this country and that country. This is how they process the money. This is how they steal money. And the question will be, at the end of everything, did we catch them? And the answer will be, sadly, no, we can't, because we still don't know who they are. We're closing in, but it's still very difficult to get information, because there's elements of getting evidence, different jurisdiction, maybe expertise. People who are investigating this, they may not be trained well in this field, right? Because this is a different domain altogether. And also, I want everybody to think that some of the criminals might be funded by another country, right? So there are state actors and state-funded actors, which means that they are well-resourced, they are professionals, they are sophisticated, right? So, it's not someone who, just learn everything from YouTube and then start doing cybercrime. These are trained actors. Actors mean not people who are acting in the movies, but, these are professionals doing cyber criminals activities, right? And we have seen some examples of this before, where, states or countries use cyber technology to, do surveillance, to damage to another countries. We've seen that before. And one point that I want to address here is that in many countries, there's a lot of debates about use of cryptography, right? So one argument is that from law enforcement side, especially, or from the state side, is that we need to I don't know what's the right word to use, but basically we need to manage the use of cryptography. Yes, it is good. It will make information very private, and it can secure communication. Yes, but criminals are using it as well, right? So if I go and raid the criminal's house, right, and I'm looking for information from his laptop, if he uses encryption, I will not be able to get this information, right? So we need to regulate this use of cryptography so that it can be weakened for investigation purposes, right? So I'm wondering if any of you agree with this or not, right? So one argument is that yes, cryptography is good. Let's encrypt everything. Another perspective is that yes, it's good, but you know what? Criminals are using it. So we need to weaken it. We need to put some backdoors or do something so that when we need to use this information, we can. Or we can tell providers. So let me give you an example. Let's see if you're comfortable with this. So a lot of us back up our data in cloud service, right? Maybe the Google's, Dropbox, and so on and so forth. Do you know if your information there is encrypted or not? Number one. But that's not the main question. The main question is, let's say all the information in the cloud that you use is encrypted. One day you become a suspect of something. Maybe law enforcement think you are a cyber criminal. They contact the provider and say that, give me information on Dr. Amir, right? Company says, well, it's encrypted. Well, here's the court order. Decrypt it for us. Because maybe they have a facility for that. Will you feel comfortable in doing so? Because if you weaken cryptography for the criminals, you basically weaken cryptography for everybody, right? So there's a potential abuse of this as well, right? Maybe for non-criminal things, maybe for political things. Yeah, just throwing out there. All right, last slide. I promised last discussion. So when we talk about all of this, there's also the victims, right? That sometimes gets glazed over. What I mean by this is that in a lot of cases, they are just statistics, right? So they're just like, a lecturer who lost money, for example, right? So what happens to them, right? So I'll give you some real example. One time, somebody lost 5,000 ringgit to a phishing attack. So some people, 5,000 is nothing, but to this person, 5,000 is his entire savings, right? So sometimes we focus a little more on the technical aspect, on the technical side of things, but we don't really think of what happens to this person who just lost money, right? Did he just gone bankrupt, or does he have food to eat? Does he have money to buy food, or what's happening there? So how do they recover from the losses? Because what I can tell you, in a lot of cases, the law enforcement or people who are investigating, they don't really follow up on these issues, right? But whose job is it anyways? So that's one thing. But also, are there any consequences to the attacker? That is normally the bigger question that the victims have. Did you catch the guy? Can I get my money back, right? And in a lot of cases, they won't get the money back. And sadly, we don't catch the attacker or the bad guy or the cyber criminals and so on and so forth. So there is aspect of this as well in this whole story about cybercrime that maybe a lot of people don't think about. And sometimes, when we don't think holistically, to borrow that word from someone famous, if you don't look at this issue holistically, then I think we miss the urgency of addressing this issue, and maybe we're not addressing it correctly as well, or prioritizing it as we should. because, well, it's not me who lost money, it's the other guy, right? It's the other person. Good luck. And I've done my best. I've told everybody, don't click on links or secure your password. But, you're not really helping people who maybe just lost a lot of money or suffered financial loss due to a cyber attack. Okay, and with that, I hope I have shared some insightful things with all of you. And if anybody would like to have a discussion, feel free. Over to you, Dr. Amir, and I will maybe start reading the chat if there's any interesting points to address. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much, Mr. Adli. Thank you for a very enlightening presentation. So we will now move to our Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please continue to type in the chat. Oh yeah, somebody already raised their hand. I was about to ask. You can also raise your hand. So, Mr. Khairul Arifin.
Assalamualaikum, Brother Adli.
Salam.
Lama tak jumpa.
Ya.
Ada
dia boleh cakap Melayu, Ifin. You boleh cakap Melayu.
Tak ada masalah. So ada beberapa soalan, few questions. Number one would be kalau in criminal hard crime, kalau macam criminal law ke apa, yang benda-benda yang bawah criminal code yang bukan cyber ni, kita di isu utamanya adalah banyak case yang kita come across with the cyber attack ke apa-apa fraud semua ni datang daripada luar negara, outside the country. So bila luar negara, isu law lah. Kalau di dalam dunia jenayah ni, the criminal law, criminal, so called the criminal tu, kita ada Interpol apa sebagainya untuk pembunuhan. So kalau dalam, if we talking about the situation of cyber ni, dia ada antara macam Interpol ke International Police ke that can yang boleh extend lah. But nota kaki dekat situ, footnote itu, there is issue of jurisdiction jugalah. Okay, itu yang pertama. Number two, itu so my question is that ini international body lah yang dah ada exist sekarang ni. Kemudian yang keduanya, in terms of details, the devil's in the details. I agree with you. Because kalau kita tengok, banyak company dia request details for the registration. So kadang-kadang dia nak semua benda. Dia nak IC, nak email, nak dia punya phone number. So kadang-kadang kita rasa IC something which is too secret, tak perlu pun. Just ke phone number, phone telefon cukup lah. Tapi tak. Jadi the issue here tak ada garis panduan meletakkan had. Walaupun there is certain law, but IT pasal PDPA dan sebagainya, tapi I think maybe the IT company ni need to be maksudnya ada moral, apa orang panggil, macam you sebut tadi lah, moral obligation lah untuk isu ni. Jadi yang itu yang my question number 2. Setakat tu dulu.
Dr. Amir, you want to open up more question because I'm going to ask another question, or Adli nak tanya dulu, nak jawab dulu?
Yeah, there's question in the chat also, but I think let Mr. Adli answer this one first.
Okay.
Let me answer daripada Mr. Arifin. Okay, interesting question. So are there any legal entities in the cyberspace realm to macam assist in investigation or coordinate and things like that? So between law enforcement agencies, yes, Interpol try to facilitate. So just to be clear, I don't work for Interpol, but I have some interaction with them. So there are mutual legal assistance, they call it, right? Between countries, between jurisdiction, for information sharing or sharing about details. However, there are two issues here normally. Satunya, of course, jurisdiction, because in the end, it's up to the country to decide whether to give or not. So Interpol tak boleh force. They cannot force people to give out information. The states to give information. That's number one. Number two, a common discussion in this space is that sometimes it takes a long time to get information. And when it comes to cyber-related investigation, you are dealing with dynamic information or data, right? And by the time you get that information, it's too late already to do any follow-up or investigation. So one example I give, this may sound a bit technical, but just to illustrate why speed is important in some of this information. So for example, let's say I have a piece of evidence or potential evidence that the attack came from a particular IP address, right? So I just want to establish the fact that the cyber criminal may potentially be in this location or behind this IP address. However, we know that in many cases, the IP address is very dynamic, which means that today you are using one IP address. Maybe within 48 hours, you will have a different IP address, right? So when I get confirmation about this IP address was used to see who used that IP address at that particular time, by the time I get this information, it might be 6 months later, right? And the person who I'm requesting that information may not have that information anymore, or things have changed, right? So it's not practical anymore to get that information, and it's kind of useless in the investigation. So that's one aspect of things. But I also want to add another example where sometimes the issue here is that when we request information, sometimes it's not directly to the law enforcement agency, right? We can request information from the provider. So let's say Facebook, okay? Facebook user, I'm going to use Dr. Amir again. Use Dr. Amir KICT ni. Siapa dia? Who is this person? The username is Dr. Amir KICT, but is this really Dr. Amir? And maybe I want to go a step more. Can you tell me, from which IP address did he access your service, right? Because I want to establish Dr. Amir ni Malaysian, so he must be using one of the Malaysian ISP IP address, for example. So Facebook may not entertain this from me directly, because they will be like, who are you? Oh, okay, law enforcement. Okay, talk to our legal counsel, right? So there is a lot of there. It's not direct. And even with this information, I cannot say that this person is actually doing it, because I need more information, right? There's a next step. Normally, law enforcement need to do a raid or acquire the devices or catch them, and so on and so forth. And that's why I have one slide later on I will show. There's a book that talks about one operation of law enforcement in a European country, where they take over the platform run by the criminals to know who the criminals are, right? So it's a more technical attempt, because getting information is too slow and unreliable. Instead of doing that, they got permission to operate a criminal platform that was used by the criminal, and they hijacked it somehow and run that for a few months to get information: who's talking to who is who, where they're connecting from, and so on and so forth. So there's that aspect as well, but that's always not easy. And because I answered the first question too long, I forgot about the second question. What was it? If you can remind me, I can address it. And
I think are you there? Remind Brother Adli. Okay. Maybe
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah.
Nasir.
Yes, Jazakumullah khairan for this wonderful presentation. Jazakumullah khairan. I have been wondering I have been wondering of seeing the hackers.
Are we going to have a slide for this presentation?
Yes, we are. We need the presentation slide, sir.
Okay, please. I'll be happy if they can be shared on the platform.
Okay, it will be better. It will be better, sir.
Okay, well, I will share.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Jazakumullah khairan, sir. So what I'm saying is that I have been seeing hackers hacking WhatsApp numbers and Facebook accounts. I have been wondering why are they? What benefit are they going to gain? Because that WhatsApp account and Facebook account solely mainly you have your friends that you are communicating with. So possibly I couldn't realize what is the motive behind what they are doing. So based on what you have discussed now, I've started to see maybe it's based on businesses or whatever. Sometimes they used to post nudity. That is this nudity is sex films and so many things in the page of someone, so that they may destroy him or so that they may damage his image. I don't know what you could say about this. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, a very, very good question. So I think in the cyber world today, within the context of cybercrime, you have to protect all of your accounts at all costs, including like WhatsApp number and phone and device like that. The reason being is something that you mentioned just now. The context. The context is gold mine for for the criminals or the attackers, because they have easy access to people who would maybe fall for the message that they're trying to send. So let's say, for example, this is very common that you see Facebook account gets hacked and all of the contacts gets a message, please help me, I'm stuck in Turkey, I was on a holiday, can you guys send me some money quickly, I'll pay you back when I get home, that kind of thing, right? So they use the account to execute the attack to the close contacts, because that's an easy way to probably get some resources. But also there's a possibility by using someone else's account to commit crime, right? They will distance themselves, when it comes to the investigation from. They'll make it difficult for the authorities or the investigator to find out who is actually behind this particular account. Yeah. So that's one main reason that we see today. Any other question? If not, I will look at some questions.
I have one question.
Okay.
Adli. Okay.
Yes.
With regard this 16 years old in Australia is forbidden now. I want to congratulate Australian government to ban the 16 years old and below to use social media. The common question from here, Malaysia, how are you going to monitor this? How are you going to monitor that the 16 years old is not using it? Then number one. Number two, MCMC in Malaysia tried to ask the users and the telco, and not really telco, the provider, social media provider like Facebook, TikTok, to be responsible on whoever uses their we have cases where cyberbullier do cyberbullying and so happen the victim commit the suicide, and the TikTok did not want to release the information of the cyberbullier and find out it's too late. As you said, time is very crucial here. So how are you going to deal with it? Yeah, two questions. How are you going to deal with the 16 years old and below? And second, how are you going to deal with the telco, like not the telco, the social media provider like TikTok and Facebook? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Prof. That's a very, very good question. So the first one is about, maybe some of you are not aware, but there was a bill passed recently in Australia banning those below 16 years old from using social media, something like that, right? So how are they going to enforce it? I'm not clear how they are going to enforce it, but I see a few possibilities. Number two, they will probably mandate social media providers to provide a mechanism to verify age, right? And if they don't do this, there will be consequences. So I think government have this power to make sure people are compliant to rules, and now they are trying to do this. Whether they will be successful or not, I'm not sure. There might be some pushback. Maybe some social media provider will appeal, but there is also going to be a possibility of there might be some social media platforms or newer ones that will come in the future, right? That people will jump to. So how do you find all of this? What the kids are using, for example. There will be new ones, I guess. After when TikTok it becomes difficult to use, there might be a new one that they all use. So I guess they will have to have resources for doing this monitoring as well, because otherwise you cannot really enforce it. Secondly, I feel that this could be something like maybe more educational and awareness, where the immediate stakeholder, the parents, will have to help enforce it as well, right? And maybe if parents don't do it, they might get in trouble or something like that. So this might be similar to wearing seatbelts, right? Yeah. So you don't wear it, it doesn't matter, your kids or you, the parents will pay for it if it's in your car, kind of thing. So maybe that's a mechanism. I'm not sure how they will do it because this is still very recent. But yes, so going back to the platform providers like TikTok and so on, I feel that the government have to engage them. I think that's the only way, because yes, they are they are from another country, maybe they are based in certain countries, but they operate here. So I believe that they have to follow local laws as well. If not, then there might be consequences. I've seen some countries that have taken drastic action where if the social media platform is not compliant with the local's law or regulation or do not cooperate, then they will be blocked, they will be banned, nobody can use them, things like that. So I think that many of the social media accounts, because they're doing this for business reasons, they will probably provide collaboration. I have experience with a few social media platforms that were not really collaborative in the past, but now they assign a local legal counsel that we can talk to immediately and to facilitate and understand the issue here and then present it to maybe their representative in another country. So I think the strategy is close collaboration and discussion so that they can understand what the issues are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Adli, and also Prof. Hussin for the question. I think there's some questions from the chat that we would like to Brother Adli to answer for us. One is from Abdul Rahim. He's asking, how does digital asset scam relate to cybercrime? For example, there's some crypto exchange platform that are founded to scam investors. So are there any legal remedies? I think he's asking in Malaysia case, but I think you can also answer in Australia's context. Brother Adli.
Yeah. So the digital asset scams, this is the typical scam, which means that somebody says you can park your crypto assets with us and then we'll manage it, and it turns out that they just steal your money. So I feel that this is not very special to just crypto asset. It could be anything as well that we see out there. So maybe the advice would still be that before you give out your valuable assets or information or data or your bank account, double check, verify. For example, the crypto exchange in many cases, they have to be registered. There must be an organization behind it. So get information about who they are, where they are registered. If they cannot provide that, or if they don't exist, or if the information looks suspicious, then don't proceed. So I think that kind of advice is generic, not for just this crypto exchange scam that is very prevalent, but also any kind of scams that require you to send money to them, or very sensitive information as well. And I see. Should I just read the other questions?
Yeah, it's okay. It's just there's one from Uganda, which is asking about what is the most prevalent cybercrime of 2024 and how is it evolving with the advancement in technology. I think because AI is here, we cannot avoid talking about AI. So this is to consumers as well, attackers as well as the defenders. How does AI actually affect cybersecurity?
Yeah, AI plays a role in this domain, both negatively and positively. Negatively, it is not a secret that many of the criminals use AI um, to construct their attacks. For example, there are some tools that I've seen where you can ask AI to help you generate the email that you want to send to a specific person. So let's say I want to send a phishing email to someone between 25 years old and 30 years old who plays game online. Craft a message for me in English or in Hungarian language or Japanese language, things like that. So it sort of cut short, the time for attackers to develop this tool. So obviously they are also using it. On the positive side, there are many more AI tools that are being used for detection, especially for like fraud. And AI is really useful for investigators. To be honest, I haven't seen that much tools out there in this space. Because as you can imagine, if we are doing investigation, we are trying to piece a lot of information from different places, and sometimes it takes a lot of time in trying to ingest the data or do the analysis. And many maybe law enforcement and also security response team, they are understaffed or they don't have enough resources. So AI can certainly help to sort of help with the analysis. I don't know if I mentioned already. The detection on the detection side is very important. Imagine if you get a phone call and then the phone says scammer, do not answer this phone, right? Don't you think that will be helpful? I'm sure somebody is looking at this particular problem already. Or when you are in a conversation, if you have an AI bot in the phone, right? The person is saying this and that, and then suddenly the phone says, "Hang up right now. You are talking to a scammer," right? So
we have the
I see
application, Brother Adli. We have application True Caller and Who's Call.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So
and at least
that's
a basic one.
Yeah.
It will inform you this is a scammer, possible scammer.
Based on the phone number, right?
Yeah.
Based on the phone number. So to me that's very useful. But I also imagine a scenario where while you are talking, you can be informed and can be warned. Because what happens normally is that the process is manual. I get a phone call, person says this and that, and then I feel okay, this is not right. I hang up and then I report it to somebody. But if this can be done by an AI bot, it can help save people, especially those who do not know, who have not experienced this. Maybe this could be a research ideas to some of our...
good research proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So I think we had at the peak just now around 50 participants, so that is quite good for
Sister Bibi Jan from Singapore going to ask question.
So we can.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Thank you very much, Amir. And thank you, Mr. Adli, for the wonderful sharing. I'm also a school counselor and family counselor in Singapore, and I find that this issue is very, very close to my heart. And Singapore is not an exception. In fact, we have a very serious case of cybercrime in all forms and format. So my question to you is, cybercrime now is more prevalent and pervasive, in view of the fact that we have II and we have smarter syndicate, stronger syndicate, and they are targeting at vulnerable, especially the children, the teens, the women, the elderly. So that despite having multiple cyber wellness program at all levels, yet we hear daily reports on all types and forms of cybercrime. Now, my question is, how do we educate and empower the community, and especially our ummah, who are extreme? Because sometimes we talk about, being mindful and being careful, and yet sometimes we are vulnerable. So that's my question. Thank you, sir.
Agree. Thank you, sister. Very, very good question. Yes, you are right. Despite all of the education programs that we see out there, in many different places, we still see this as an issue. One cybercrime example that I did not give just now because I don't want to get into too much to give up too much information because of the limited time, is the targeting of children for sexual abuse and things like that. This is very, very prevalent on the internet. And this group of people, they're very highly technical as well, but it's a crime that has persisted for so long already. And they are the ones who are using encryption and so on and so forth, and that's why the police is also making the argument, these people are using encryption, we need to weaken encryption. Anyhow, that's a different point. But I think as far as education perspective, I feel that in many places where education is being done, no one looks at the effectiveness of the messaging. No one really review whether this is really helpful or working. Because and I can tell you one of the problem is that sometimes this messaging is done by technical people. Like, I can tell you what the nature of the thing is, and therefore you do A, B, C, but whether this is effective or useful or what's the feedback from the user when they get all these messages, is it really practical and so on? I don't think people are really spending time on this topic. So it's been the same kind of messaging since I started work in this field. It's same advice, the same strategy. Okay, we target the parents, we do this in school and so on and so forth, but really, is it really, really useful? So perhaps it is time, and I don't have a solution for it, but other than just saying, maybe it's time we see whether or not what we do is really, really practical and useful, and is it really aligned with the things that people are experiencing today, in terms of, where they access information, where they get information, and so on. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you so much, Sister Bibi and Brother Adli, for the answer. Okay, so I think we take one last question because almost 10:30. So as Aliu Muhammad Saleh raised a hand. So please proceed with the question. Aliu?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you speak louder, Brother Aliu?
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
Yes, it's very, very vague.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, better.
Yeah. This is Ali Muhammad Saleh from Nigeria. I understand that, even though I came in late, but I understand that the cybercrime is very wide. The reason that, in terms of investigation, I wanted to ask, having listened to Mr. Adli, that investigation sometimes take late, so that sometimes the victim will not be benefited in extent. So how can we mitigate the delay in the investigation aspect of the cybercrime? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very useful question. So there's been ongoing work and effort to address this issue because we know for a fact that getting information is very slow, and maybe the party that we are requesting information, they don't have technical expertise and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of work in this space. One is that I think there's more and more cross-border collaboration. So emphasis on getting a few law enforcement teams to work together. So I see this as a positive trend in the last few years, where a few countries work on a case that is affecting the three countries. They get together, they have an operation. So we've seen some of that. That could be a mitigation a strategy as well, to just make people more familiar with investigating, working together, establishing trust, most importantly, and then addressing a common concern that is affecting the community and the society. However, there are always going to be challenges, right? Because for example, one country may have more resources than the other one. So in that case, how do you solve that particular problem? It can't be solved immediately. That's basically my point. But I think cross training, joint operations, these things really help in addressing this particular issue. And also, I feel that law enforcement agencies and people who deal with this particular issue, they also need regular technology updates. What's happening out there. because things move really quickly. I can tell you, maybe 10 years ago, when we are doing investigation, there were no mobile devices, or not many issues involving mobile devices. But today, it's all about mobile devices. Similarly, the cloud. Information used to be in people's laptop and computer. These days, if I acquire someone's laptop, the data is not there. You know, it's with Google's or Dropbox. So I need to include those providers, you know, in the communication, and getting us to be familiar with the technology that they use, so that we, you know, can request for data or information or get their help when sick. So there's that element as well of education, constantly educating the people who deal with this investigation of the latest tech and technology, and sharing threat intelligence between you know, parties and so on. So there's ongoing work, no doubt, but you know, there is still frustration in dealing with some of these investigative procedures sometimes, because it's just taking a long time. And I guess this is something that we have to face still in the coming years.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Lee. Prof. Hussin, you like to say something?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Amir, and especially our guest and expert of cybersecurity from Brisbane, Australia, and Malaysian, not Maori or we met in New Zealand a couple months ago. Okay, by the way, Malaysia, Alhamdulillah, keep improving. One thing that other countries like Uganda, Nigeria, or Indonesia, I don't know what's their initiative, but we established this 997, like 991, 999. This one, 997 is National Scam Cybersecurity, NC, National Scam Response Center, and NSRC, National Scam Response Center, is 997. And now they are working 8 to 8. Last time, not during the weekend. Now it's during the weekend. In fact, we suggest the government to open up to 24x7, because the scam know that after 8 there are nobody going to report, can report to them. So they did it. They will do it after 8 o'clock p.m. Okay, I think we will invite Brother Adli again, and thank you, Brother Dr. Amir. And of course, maybe, Brother Adli, we can come up with the series of cybersecurity or cyber scam. Maybe you come up with introduction. The most important thing, how to protect ourselves and our family. The simple as how to come up with a better password, how to change our password, how, like 2FA. People mention 2FA, but people will guessing how to do it. So this is as simple as that. That I think maybe we will invite you again, inshallah. Pass back to Dr. Amir. I know it's what, 12 o'clock midnight in Australia now?
1:30 a.m.
Wow, sorry, Brother Adli, 1:30. Make tajud after this. Yeah, Brother Amir.
Thank you so much, Brother Adli. So I want to really thank Brother Adli for sharing his expertise with us tonight. So I think there's still a lot more to talk about in this topic, especially in terms of the interesting thing that you talk about encryption being a double-edged sword. So this is something that, you know, that happened before in US in San Bernardino, if you remember, where Apple refused to remove the encryption, so the police cannot take action on the. So this is maybe like Prof. Hussin say, we can have a series of talk in the future. Inshallah, we can discuss further on these things. Right. So inshallah, thank you very much for everyone who joined. Thank you to Brother Ali, Prof. Hussin, and everyone. So let's end our session tonight with Tasbih Kafarah and Surah Al-As.
Recording stopped.